Thanks very much, Wael, and thanks to all of you for writing in with your comments and questions from all around the world. We see you. And there's still a chance to enter some questions and comments there. We're going to come to them soon. But before we do, panel, I'd love to come back to you because Wael talked about practicing what you preach and there being a gap between what companies say their intentions are and what they are actually doing. And it I'm curious about whose responsibility is it to lead, actually? Because it seems in some ways consumers are driving the urgency and pressing big organizations to change. But there's also change happening from the top. So actually, in your view, whose responsibility is it to lead? Maybe, Nasera, you can start.
I mean, there's no clear, you could say, this is the right way. Of course, I think having top management dedication and interest is very important. At least that's my view. I really think because they're also the top people who are deciding the strategy of the company and they're responsible for it. So it's important that they are invested completely in that. Then, of course, having said that, Coloplast is also a listed company. So, of course, investors are also driving. And I do believe it's very important that investors also take keen interest in this because till today, investors have always been interested in can we make the money, but then they're working with finite resources, so they ought to understand that it's in their interest as well. So we've seen that a lot of movement from the investor community. In the last few years, we've had so many questions from them asking us about the action that we have committed that we're going to take and what are we doing, so how are we progressing as well. So that's also quite an important, I would say, they're the ones driving it, but it's everyone's responsibility in the end. Yeah.
Do you find that they'd hold back their investment if you didn't show your sustainability ambitions?
I think so far on certain elements which are easy to measure, because that's also one of the difficulties with sustainability, measuring sustainability in the right way. Climate action, yes, we have a whole methodology and still it is not, it is a very vast, so there's a lot of changes happening in that. So I think the amount at which they have understood, yes, they have been asking, and they have been also saying they choose to then invest because of that reason. But it's increasing. There's a lot of things. I know, for example, BlackRock has committed to. We are also committed to what we call this task force on climate-related financial disclosures. Okay. So it's really about understanding our sustainability performance, but also how does that impact our financial performance. So that is also what I know investors are interested in, and they will be making decisions based on that.
Super to know. Michael, whose responsibility is it to lead from your point of view?
So it's interesting, Nasera, that you mentioned governance, because we actually have a situation within our company where we've been able to impact our governance from the ground up by making external commitments. Not everyone might know this, but Baboko works within a community. Phil, you mentioned Coca-Cola and I believe L'Oreal at the start. Mm-hmm. Also included here is the Absolute Company and Procter & Gamble and a long-standing member, Carlsberg. What we did was, together with this community, all commit to the same vision of what we wanted the future of packaging to be, at least for the members working within this group. And that allowed every single member to go back to their own organization and apply that vision to their own governance structure. So by that way, we made an external commitment, took it with us back home, and then anchored that within ourselves. So you can have a couple of passionate change makers, really, within the organization impacting the governance directly. So it's a two-way street, I would say, for us. You need the passionate policymakers within their sustainability departments, and you need the governance to listen and be aware that there is a changing industry beneath them as well.
It must feel a little bit the same for yourself, Anna. There's a changing industry in terms of the sports industry, but football in particular. Like, who do you think shoulders the responsibility there, or who feels that they should shoulder the responsibility?
I think at this point, it's almost everyone's responsibility, right? But I think also football means so much to people, right? We just talked about passion and community and emotions. And I think when you have that kind of passionate community around you and you mean so much to people, a lot of people, then you also have a responsibility. right? So with a big platform, also a big voice into the community, I think there comes a responsibility to use that right. And then what is right? I'm not sure, but at least to also try and inspire and maybe impact on something else than what is maybe seen as the core, which is the football in our case. But I think once you have so many people committed to what you do, support, and they stay loyal through also hard times, I think you also have a responsibility to use that for something else. But yeah, otherwise I completely agree. We have to have top management, board invested in this, and the strategy has to be anchored at the top. Yeah.
It's interesting. Oh, please, Michael.
Can I jump on that? Because I think there's an interesting, what I'm catching here as well, which might go across industries, is that while this may have been a reactive approach initially to a spark that came from outside, our users or consumers, what it has done is basically light a fire underneath the organization so that we now have the chance to be more proactive in setting our strategy. We don't have to just wait for the surrounding world to tell us what they expect, because we now have the chance to impact it more directly ourselves before we have to get to that point.
Definitely. And also because it is so complex. So you might not know, or the surrounding world might not know what there is to do, except they say, we want you to do better, but they can't say exactly this, do this or do exactly that. We have to find out what is the next right step. So yeah, definitely this dialogue or this collaboration to some extent.
You're the one sort of setting the direction. Because we were just talking earlier about channeling their passion.
Yeah.
So you're setting the direction so they can channel their passion in the right way, not just for the sport, but also for everything else that surrounds the sport as well. So
exactly. And that's also where the responsibility to make things clear and visible comes in, right? To make it easier to take part of this as well.
Actually, just taking on from that, because you just mentioned clear and visible, one of the things that I've been feeling now working with sustainability for several years, and also what you read in the media, what you see other people talk about, I think one thing I've always stood by, if it is measured, if it's reported, then that means something is getting done. If people are just talking about it, then it's just, and I hate to use the word greenwashing, but it could be more in that direction. So setting the direction and then measuring the action, I think that is also very important. And that is definitely, I would say, our responsibility. That's not our users or our consumers, but it is, I would say, the responsibility of the company and whoever has the role to drive that together with the company.
It's very interesting. So part of taking action is actually being able to measure it and acknowledge it and be able to, and build on that, of course, be able to say, okay, we have come so far. Really interesting. I've got a little note here that I made for myself as well, because talking quite intimately about your own companies and organisations, but to what extent do you feel the responsibility to influence your own sectors and industries? And is there a role to play there as well, I guess?
I would say definitively yes. There is a role, of course, to be in some aspects, not just an ideal, but a bit of a lighthouse for those companies that are very dedicated to commit resources, to commit their vision to sustainability. Not in the fact that those companies should be applauded, but they should act perhaps as inspiration and should be accessible by other companies within the industry. There is a very archaic way of thinking that's saying, if I meet a competitor of mine, I should stop talking immediately. I think we're moving beyond that point. As you, Anna, stated, it is complex. There is no one single solution here that we're going to come with if we don't also start talking across even competitors to create simple principles that an industry can work around. There might be an aspect of our value chain that a competitor has already resolved, and we should definitely be able to leverage that.
Exactly. And I think also when it comes to suppliers, we have to be more companies asking for services, right? Because then you'll be able to build a business around it, and we'll get there sooner if we are together in it.
And this is maybe myself showing vulnerability as well. I mean, we are a medical device company, and I think our designers and our production and innovation, they are experts at designing the right products. But we are not material specialists, even though, yes, we have a team who are extremely, I would say, they're dedicated, they're very knowledgeable. But we need to, I mean, we can build our own competency to a certain extent, but unless we partner with, as you said, suppliers, maybe even, associations and all competitors are linked to that, we're not going to be able to find the right solutions. So there is, in this sense, I think collaboration is the only way if we want to solve the bigger problem.
Lovely. Well, I'm going to stop asking the questions myself now and actually throw out to the public who are watching as well. And we have some lovely questions coming in. I'm going to start with the first one is, how can I, as a simple employee, start the sustainable change in the company? Who'd like to have a go?
I'm going to start with that, sorry. It's just because it's on my agenda and it's on my mind. I think to begin with, first and foremost, I said, yes, top management is key, responsible for setting the scene and also being invested in it. But bring yourselves right into that. So if there is a strategy, if there are milestones and ambitions, catch on to it. And you're smart enough to know what is your role in that. That is one thing. But then, of course, sustainability can be also achieved in smaller actions. Behavior changes. We're so used to, and I have to, applaud you for bringing your bottle over here, your paper bottle to drink water. We're so used to just, okay, go pick up a bottle, drink that water.
God, I've got to bring it into camera now. It wouldn't make sense otherwise.
Yes.
There you go.
It is, after all, finalists, so it does make sense to have it with us.
So I think it's just about the choices we make as individuals while we're at work. I mean, outside of work nowadays, of course, many of us are also working from home. So it's key about asking ourselves, like me as an employee, what do I need to do to join this movement and to contribute to this movement? And then, of course, ask the right questions as well. If you find that there is something you're not happy about or you want that change, then there are platforms, reach out, share, and I would say continue asking if you're not still happy about it. So there's some action that is taken in the end.
Yeah, and if I could just quickly build on that, I would also say if you have the means or if you have people around you that could also assist you in that, make it measurable. Create this benchmark that we were discussing just before to see where is our starting point. It's an easy, actionable point that you can bring into your organization. You can make it very evidently clear what is your current status, and then you can work from there with slight improvement suggestions. Just make a 3-point action plan. Even as a simple employee, this is something everyone can do with the field that they're really passionate or an expert in.
Super.
And even if you don't want to be the one driving the change, then be open to change your habits. I think that's something that we can all think of, that we have to be open to change our habits, because as you say, it's so deeply rooted within us that we just grab the plastic bottle, have a meeting setting that we all know. What if we could do something a little bit different?
Very nice. Keep the mic up there. And I have a question for you here from the audience as well. Anna, what's your thoughts on sharing the values of inclusiveness, equality and sustainability through the big voice football has?
Yes. Well, I think football as such is a big platform. Of course, there are athletes and then there are the clubs. And I think these are different platforms, even though they're using, or what can you say, they're partly intertwined, but different platforms. And I think the clubs, as I said before, when we have this passion and this community around us, we have to be open to tap into this passion to talk about sustainability, inclusiveness, diversity. But of course, you have to find out where you're at first, right? What are the first steps that we can take, and where do you want to be at? So I think it's a very important work that I think is obvious to do. If it's a business, if it's a football club, or if it's an athlete, but of course, athletes are a singular people also, right? Even if they have a strong platform, a strong voice. but you have to remember they're singular people first and foremost.
Very nice, thank you. I'm going to go straight on to the next question. Do B2B companies face the same needs to become more sustainable as B2C do?
I love the question, but I would also actually challenge it a bit and say I wouldn't put that division into place anymore. We can't really focus on ourselves as being either consumer-facing or client-facing. Whenever you have any position within the creation of either a product or a platform that people can be passionate about, you are part of a chain that delivers something to people. So the exact same expectation that should be to the customer-facing side of a product should be to you as well. And there should be a very clear way of communicating with your partners around you to ensure what that expectation is.
I completely agree. I mean, I've been a student of, you could say, system thinking from the very beginning. That's where I even started my career. So I really have to say, unless you think of yourselves in a system, the whole cradle to grave or the whole circular way of thinking, I don't think we can make any change. Singularly, we can only do as much. So it doesn't matter if you're B2C or B2B.
Very nice, thank you. I'm just going to ask a question of my own as well, because I'm really interested just to squeeze this in. We talk about sustainability being a long-term vision, a long-term goal with some, in my mind, there's some short-term pressures, particularly when the IPCC released their report. And we all realised, oh my goodness, if we hadn't realised that already. So how do you counteract that fatigue? How do you keep your momentum up and the ambitions going? Where do you get your energy from? As three leaders who are working directly with this, I'm really curious to hear.
Yeah, it's a good question. Of course, this report wasn't unexpected, but also not very positive reading. I think my motivation comes from seeing that we actually do something, right? So to see, okay, this goal was met, of course, and then you have to measure it also to be able to communicate it. But I think seeing that we actually move something and get some feedback that it resonates with people, but are we doing it all fast enough? No, not as a system or a global world, but that we are doing something is my motivation, at least.
You could be forgiven to be anxious about it, though, as a person. Do you understand what I mean?
Yes, and the challenge, I believe, is definitely immense, no matter what part of the system you're looking at. Either you're at the creation end or just as a consumer in day-to-day life. But I think Wayu from the interview also had a very good point, saying, remember to celebrate the small victories. And that is such an important aspect of your outward-facing approach to whenever you get a critical question. Remember that you have celebrated small victories that got you to this point. But equally for your organization at every level. Keep talking to people, figure out what is important to them, and when you resolve some of those issues, remember to celebrate them loud and vividly. But be aware that there is definitely still an immense undertaking here, but you shouldn't stop just halfway.
So I just want to add a point. I have to say, it also drives me knowing that we need to make change fast, especially when it comes to climate action. So also taking accountability for it is very important. Nowadays, we're all talking about how somehow linking climate milestones or what companies want to do to remuneration. And I think that is also one of the key things that we need to focus on. I think that is the direction. If we take accountability for it, then we know we will make some action, and then eventually the anxiousness will slowly go down, and maybe we don't reach a horrible future as we can see in the IPCC report if we don't meet the targets.
Completely understand, thank you. We'll go to one last audience question. As consumers, what are some ways we can encourage the organisations that we interact with to listen and really want to be more transparent and involved in sustainable practices? Michael, maybe you can start.
Yeah, first off, I gotta state that keep asking critical questions. That is such an important part. If there is an area that you think that you would like to know more on, or you would like to engage with a company that works within a field that you find to be a critical aspect of this journey and development we're on, keep asking those questions. And there are definitely people at the other end who are willing to talk to you about that. In terms of demanding transparency, I think it's also critically important that we focus our attention in the right places. And I'm going to come back to your question again, Anne, which I've done once before, which is something like, why are there festivals? Sure, it's a good consideration, but there are festivals. We are in a world that we have created to fit the needs that we have as consumers as well. So rather than focus on those that can enact a change. What can I do at a festival? How can I engage with it to make it a better practice as a maybe yearly occurrence?
Nazira, do you have any thoughts?
I agree to all of that. So
Yes to all the above.
yes to all of that. I think staying connected and as you said, just be part of the change. What can, again, ask yourself as an individual, what can I do? And if there is a direction that has been set, how can I contribute to that direction? I think that's ask yourself first, more than asking all others or the organization. Ask yourself. That's what I would say.
Do you have anything to add, Anna?
I think we're all so accessible. All companies do listen, I think. Can we change it immediately? Maybe not. But we do listen on all channels almost, right? So yes, keep asking the questions. And as consumers, maybe you can also vote with your money, but that's an easy answer, right? But you can always make your own choices. And the economy is also depending on where that goes. So that's an option too.
It certainly feels like the authenticity of brands there's a movement towards that, both being authentic, but actually allowing room to be yourself as a brand as well, to be honest, to talk to the vulnerabilities we talked about earlier as well, which in my mind can only benefit the consumers, the people who are purchasing or interacting with the thing that you make or do or the service you provide. We have to wrap things up in a minute. I just want to ask you one quick question. If we were to meet in a year's time, what do you hope has happened by then? What progress have we made?
Can I be, even before we started this, I think, Michael, you and I got talking about your paper bottle and what kind of material you were using. Maybe we're already talking partnership. I don't know. I'm just trying to say, we come back to you with some partnership update.
Partnerships, that's music to my ears. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and just to follow on that, I mean, just conversations like the ones here today, if they can engage any member out there that are thinking, maybe I have something to contribute to that. Maybe I could join this community and be, the future recycler of paper bottles, or I could help Coloplast with some of their considerations that they have for their strategy they put to 2025. It's just a matter of reaching out and connecting and building the partnerships, building on the knowledge that it is a complex system that we have to tackle.
Thank you. Thanks. So, that's unfortunately all we have time for. Thanks to our panel. Nazira, Michael, Anna, thank you so much. And thanks for being here to share your thoughts on sustainable movements more than anything. And also to Kerry and Wael for joining us on video. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your perspective on the world as well. And of course, thank you to you for tuning in. It's so much appreciated and frankly wouldn't be possible without you. The questions and comments have all come in. We couldn't get to them all, of course, because you're so positive and sharing so much, which we love. But there'll be a second chance in a few weeks' time on September the 8th, I believe. Don't hold me to that, when you can join the follow-up Clubhouse event, which is, funnily enough, on Clubhouse. Join us then. The details will be announced on social media as well. And you can catch the next broadcast session like this, Designing the New Usual, which will be about diversity. That's on the 17th of November. So we have a few months to go until then. So until then, from the Index Project and from Designit, and from me, Phil, as well, thanks, and from all of us here actually in the broadcast, well, thanks for joining. Please take care of yourself and see you next time.